not only before hearing it, but even after they've heard it for the first time. That is to say, although all things come to pass in accordance with its logos, men seem to be quite without any experience of it, at least if they're judged in the light of such words and deeds as I am setting forth. Now, my own method is to distinguish each thing according to its nature and to specify how it behaves. Other men, on the contrary, are as neglectful of what they do when awake as they are when asleep. Therefore, we should be guided by what is common to all. Yet, although the Logos is common to all, most men live as if each of them had a private intelligence of his own. Therefore, men who love wisdom should become acquainted with a great many particulars. Well then, how does this idea of the Logos fit within his scheme? It's certainly a principle that's behind, and therefore with which all things accord. Therefore, he goes to another level. He goes to another level. Watch this level. He says there's a hidden harmony. That's the problem. There's a hidden harmony. And our job is we have to know the intelligence behind that. We have to understand that intelligence by which all things are steered through all things. Look here. Hey. Things as they proceed through each other, things that proceed through each other, whatever it may be, as things then proceed through each other, the thing that is steering that's intelligence. There's an intelligence within nature. If it is, then how do you grasp it? He says, you don't think you have to grasp? Go for what's common. Right? Try to discover what's common to all. Right? And then you have to now he has an ethical side to himself. Right? He has a very curious and interesting ethics. He says what you have to do is you have to learn to speak with rational awareness and thereby hold strongly to that which is shared in common. What is it that is shared in common? He says, you know what that is? That's law. Law in nature and law among men. Now, it's very interesting in his view of law, both in nature and among men. He says, men should hold on to their law in a state and defend it as much as they would fight for their own city. Therefore, you must protect it, you must preserve it, because that includes and contains the rationality. What men have brought together is a rationality. That becomes fixed in law. Your job, therefore, is to protect it and follow it. In nature, the law is the logos. Among men, it's thinking and rationality. Therefore, the law, when you're considering the law, either in nature or among men, you're really listening to what he calls, you're listening to the counsel of one. That's what he's saying. See? Law, whether it's in nature as logos, whether it's in the rationality found among good laws among mankind, when you're obeying it, you're just obeying one. That's what you're doing. The counsel of one is what you're obeying, and that's what your mind should be fixed upon. It's because the rational, the soul, the soul of man is the greatest mystery. You have to realize, for Heraclitus, the soul is so interesting and yet different from what most people regard it as, that we must go there because we want to see how the one, right, the hidden harmony, logos, come together into the idea of the soul. Right? Ready. Next page. Here's a look here. Only the divine nature has real understanding. There is no understanding in man. Only the divine nature has it. Human nature has no real understanding, only the divine does. Therefore, Heraclitus really has a theory of participation. Because that's what it means. It's a theory of participation. There is only intelligence in what encompasses man. See, what's around him, right? And that's the theory of participation. He said the difficulty is that men don't understand it and they block it. And they block it, and he has a great expression to understand why men don't see this. He says, what is divine escapes men's notice. And it's only because of one thing, because of their incredulity. Pardon?
We were talking about.
Yes, yes. It's because of their basic beliefs, their incredulity. They don't believe it. That's why they can't see. You have to know what you see before you can see it. I mean, you can't see it, you can't recognize it before you know it, but you have to know it before you recognize it, then you can see it. Right? So this is the way in which he brings you into that development. Therefore, going back now to the idea of man, man's character is his true guardian divinity. And therefore, a wise man, or the soul of a wise man, is nothing other than a beam of light from the divine. Right? That's what he calls it, a beam of light. Right? That's it. So you got to struggle for those. Now look here. What is this divine nature that has real understanding with which man can participate the divine nature? Now we're going into the theology of Heraclitus, and that's where we have to go. All right, here we go. Zeus. That's what he calls it. He says, wisdom is one and unique. Wisdom stands apart from everything else. It's transcendental. It's willing, yet unwilling, to be called by the name of Zeus. Therefore, for Heraclitus, the highest principle, the one, is nothing other than Zeus. That's willing, yet unwilling, to be called by the name of Zeus. Well, if that's the case, then what do we have here? What we have here, therefore, now I want to go back to remember what we said before, the idea of the soul. The wise soul, then, is a beam of light. All right? But his idea of the soul is it has no limits. It has no limits. Try as you may, he says, you can never discover the limits of the soul or the profound depths of it. By any path, he says, take all the paths you want. You can never discover the limits of the soul. Therefore, it is unlimited. His view of the soul is unlimited. And among the wise, therefore, it can be talked about as a beam of light. And therefore, it has astonishing depth. That's his view of the soul. So let's see whether we can pull things together now. He has a hidden harmony, which is a synthesis of all of the processes in nature, which are opposites, captured in the idea of strife. He finds behind it a principle, the logos, that creates a higher unity. It allows a theory of participation. Therefore, there's intelligence and understanding that stands apart from man, within which man may participate. And behind that is a wisdom, which is one, and we have a right to call it, in terms of Heraclitus, Zeus. Now, every one of these points I've gotten out of Heraclitus. Let me read you a couple of them. The hidden harmony is better than the obvious. People do not understand how that which is at variance with itself agrees with itself. There is a harmony in the bending back, as in the cases of the bow and the lyre. Listening not to me, but to the logos, it is wise to acknowledge that all things are one. Wisdom is one and unique. It is unwilling and yet willing to be called by the name of Zeus. Wisdom is one, to know the intelligence by which all things are steered through all things. Now, I could now multiply the other side of this, where he makes fun of people who do not accept his view, and that multiplies his work by 3 or 4. And I'll just read a couple of those, because some of them